All right. Admit. Can you guys see that participants? The people that I'm admitting in, or
Yeah, we
when
can.
I see my screen? You can?
People are coming in the room, yes.
Cool. Sorry about that. I'll try and keep an eye out for it as I do it. But hello, everyone. I am Danielle Laffey. It's so lovely to have you all here. And looks like I'm not even sharing the right. There we go. And now we're here on August 20th. A little bit of a rough start today, but good morning, everybody, and afternoon to those who are on the East time or maybe somewhere else in the world that is an afternoon time frame for you all. Lovely to meet you. I'm excited to have Eric here with us today to talk a little bit about Salesforce Blind Spots. And I'm realizing that that's even spelled wrong. So Salesforce, we've got Salesforce Blind Spots, how you can find them and how you can alleviate them with some configuration and reports and things. Monica and I are really excited to have you guys here today. Monica is on the line as well. And if you want to go ahead and say a quick hello, Monica.
Hey, y'all. Good to see you. Hope to see you at Dreamforce.
Yeah. So without further ado, we'll go into a couple of Dreamforce things really quick, and then I'll turn the floor over to Eric. As Dreamforce is coming up, we are very excited. This is our, we actually get to see a lot of people in person event of the year, which is really exciting. And so wanted to get a few things on your guys' calendars if you need it. We've got the insurance breakfast. We're actually doing that with Salesforce and have a couple of insurance folks who are speaking about digital transformation and how Salesforce has helped them. That is from 8 to 9 at the Palace Hotel. And then immediately following that, our Trailblazer community is putting a networking session together. Monica and I have done this for a couple of years. And the last time that we did it, we got a lot of really great feedback. It literally is just a place for you guys all to gather, get together and network with each other, talk to each other, learn from each other, and just make some great connections in the industry overall. There's no presentations or anything for that particular piece. That is in the Palace as well, so you can kind of do 2 in 1. Really excited to see Monica speaking at Dreamforce this year. She is an avid speaker there, a long time person who speaks there. I don't know, Monica, if you want to talk a little bit about your data sessions that are in there.
Oh, it's on. We've talked about data quality. It's data audit 101. I'm going to share some real world. They are insurance stories, but I can't say insurance at Dreamforce, but they happen to an insurance company.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's going to be fun. It's very upbeat, kind of different type of session.
Awesome. I think that we're going to put the links in the chat here. And then you also do a welcome reception in conjunction with Salesforce and I think Misty and
yes,
in the insurance world that are also
so
involved.
on the very first day in the morning, I don't know if they have it. I'll try and put the link. On the very first day, it's a networking event and it is amazing. We had about 500 people last year. It's right before Dreamforce starts. It's like 7:30 in the morning, and you go there and everyone there is there to meet other people and to connect and find people that they're going to hang out with the rest of Dreamforce. So I very much encourage you. I'll try and find the link and post it in the chat as well.
Awesome. And I think maybe
and then there's a welcome party as well on that night that we also host on the Monday night. Sorry, Monday night there's a party. Tuesday morning is the thing with Salesforce, the networking. So I'll try and post everything if I can find the links.
Awesome. I think that we can also, if you haven't already, a little shout out to Not Is Blank. So you can go find her on LinkedIn and find the invites there. And we'll also make sure that they get put out into the community as well. Both from the community page perspective, and we'll try and send an email out as things get a little bit closer to the event so that you guys know all of the happenings that are going on if you are going to Dreamforce overall. So I guess without further ado, I think that's all I had from a housekeeping perspective. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and let Eric take over. Eric, thanks so much.
Thanks, Danielle.
Today. Appreciate, I know we had connected before and you've done this for just Salesforce admins in general, but we found a little twist on insurance too, which is fun. So thanks so much for taking the time to put.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Danielle. And thanks, Monica, for hosting. And thanks to everyone for coming today. The goal, and I'll share in a second, the goal is to introduce some techniques that can help us, with what are these blind spots, how do we deal with them, and how do we get more visibility and clarity. And it really can be true in any org, but certainly with the complexity of some insurance processes and the number of integrations that go on in a lot of insurance implementations. Visibility can be even more important in terms of handling issues and events that come up and doing it quickly so that it doesn't take our whole week away from us on a research project. But enough, let's get into it. We're going to do a little bit of slides just to set up the background and the notion of blind spots and where they live and what we can do about it. And then we'll jump right into an org and see some simple examples of how we can specifically work to create that visibility. And what we build today, you'll be able to sort of take back and apply in lots of different areas across your environments. So with that, I am going to start sharing and away we'll go.
As you go through, I will monitor questions for you in the chat. But are you okay with people kind of jumping in if they have a specific question, or do you want to hold questions to the end? What's best for you?
No, yeah, that'd be great because I'll just keep talking. I'll just keep going. So if we can stop right at the point where someone has a question, happy to address that. But I appreciate your help, Danielle, because when I'm in slide mode, I won't necessarily be able to see the hands raising from Zoom. So if you can help me with that, that'd be great. But yes, if you have questions, comments, ideas, please bring them up anytime. This is a group meeting, not a lecture.
Awesome.
All right. Okay. So really, we're talking about blind spots, but the element we're trying to get to here is clarity. How do we get clear about what's going on under the covers in Salesforce, especially in production, especially at runtime, right? And so one of the questions I always ask people is, what was the last thing you lost an afternoon to, right? Maybe it was researching a user question or an issue. Maybe it's bugs that keep coming up and going away and coming back again. Maybe you're in meetings with the technical team, or maybe it's just staring at emails like this and support requests like this that say, hey, Salesforce is broken, can you fix it?
I'm going to interrupt you just real quick.
And when you...
Like you're sharing.
Yeah,
Eric,
go ahead.
are you sharing?
I'm sorry?
Are you sharing a screen?
I am not sharing, but that would be way easier for you guys to see things if I did.
Thank you.
Good suggestion. Good tip. Let me figure out how to do that. Share. There we go. Wonderful. I was wondering why no one was laughing at my slide. Okay, here's where we were, right?
There we go.
Well,
now we can see.
Now we can see it. We're winning. Great. Thank you, Danielle. So what was the last thing you lost an afternoon to? We were talking about, right? And it's often not our work. It's not insurance things, or it's not business things. It's chasing down the answer to some user question. It's some bug that keeps popping up and we don't know what the issue is. It's meetings with the technical team or consultants we're working on, right? And so what happens is the research and the meetings we're having about the Salesforce end up taking longer than the amount of time we can spend working on and fixing Salesforce and addressing user issues, right? People ask follow-up questions like, okay, there's an error. Well, for how long has that been happening? How was our data impacted? Who did that even impact? And these become really, really tough questions to answer when you have only a simple email or a simple case that somebody entered to go on, right? And so again, the goal is clarity, right? What's great about Salesforce is that user problems, that people have, they're just not that hard to solve. As long as you know exactly how the user behaved, what data was involved, what the results were, and you have an audit trail of every trigger, class, and automation that was invoked, right? If you have all that, then you're good. Unfortunately, most of the time we don't have that, right? And that leads to guesswork and research projects, right? I don't know if any of you feel sometimes like you're sort of guessing your way to the answer, just because you don't have the information, you don't know what happened underneath, right? But if we could see everything that was going on in Salesforce, right, we'd be able to get a lot more done, and we'd start to see case times go down, users be happier, resolution times go down, and And all of it is about bringing what's happening in Salesforce forward, right? What's in the way of that? Well, what we talk about is blind spots. And so, really simply, blind spots are any action process or process you have where the inputs, the choices people made, the calculations, they're unavailable to you during or following. It all gets lost in the magic of using Salesforce, right? And blind spots are everywhere in Salesforce because Salesforce keeps giving us new tools to work faster and to automate everything, right? So whether it's flows or code, we just keep inventing new ways to make the details of work a background task. And that's great for a lot of reasons. It creates consistency, it creates speed, but it also creates these blind spots, right? When things go wrong and we need to know what happened, we can't go back and ask, right? And so that's the problem of blind spots. Where do they happen? Well, some places are obvious, right? Blind spots certainly occur when we do flows, especially if they're not user-facing flows, if they're auto launches or scheduled flows or things like that. All that work is happening in the background. Most, if not all code, Apex code, if we have that in our orgs, we don't really have insight into what's happening in that code at the time that the user is using the system. And then integrations. If we have a separate policy system, right, or a separate application management system, right, or separate renewals process system, when there's problems between that system and Salesforce, again, usually those problems are hidden or only known to outside parties. Okay. So those are sort of some obvious ones, but there are additional ones, right? One of them is the environment itself. So I don't know how many of you work in an environment where you have sandboxes of various types, you might have staging or UAT or all these different environments that you have, and then you get to production, right? And in production, you have less rights, less visibility than you do in lower environments. Does that happen to anybody? And so this causes a real problem, right? Because the tools that Salesforce gives us, like let's talk about the developer console or debug logs. These are sort of common tools that people will use in Salesforce to try to get underneath the blind spot and figure out what's happening. The dev console and debug logs, the two main tools, they both require the view all data permission, right? And again, in higher environments, fewer and fewer people have that permission. And so what works for you in a sandbox or a developer's environment isn't going to work at runtime and production. So even the tools we have are can be difficult to use in production where the users are really experiencing some issues. Okay. Another one is time. And pretty simply, the issue with time is that these tools, even if you have the permissions for them, the challenge with them is that they're forward facing. So to use debug logs, you need to set them up before a person might have an issue, which means you have to know a person is going to have an issue. When someone submits a case to you and says, hey, I had a problem yesterday, I had a problem just now, there's nothing you can really do to go in and look at what happened to them, unless you happened to have a debug log turned on for them. And since debug logs only last for 24 hours, that's unlikely. So again, Salesforce has some tools, but given that we have less and less access to them, the closer we get to our users, and given that you can't look backwards with them, it really starts to limit the value of those tools. We really want to understand what's happening at runtime as it happens. And that's what monitoring is about and what we're going to talk about. And then the final blind spot, you know what? People become blind spots as well because they'll enter a case and give you half the information or no information or a screenshot, right? It doesn't really tell you what happened. That's if they remember it correctly. Foggy memories cause blind spots as well. And so there are a number of areas, and probably more than we've just listed here, where Salesforce is doing great work, the system is functioning great until it's not. And when it's not, what do we do? What do we do with these blind spots? What do they look like in real life? So these are some kind of philosophical places. What does that look like to us, right? People might say, hey, the inbound applications process that we have, does anybody know when it ran last? No, right? hey, my reports are off. Is the benefits integration down right now, right? The policy system reports and the Salesforce reports don't match. These sort of anecdotal things that become our problem as owners of the platform, but we don't really know. The answer is, I'll check it out. I'll go on a research mission. I don't know if you've ever had a 5-minute question take 5 hours to answer. That's because of blind spots, right? And of course, the all-time favorite, Jim says his Salesforce isn't working. And I really want to help Jim. I mean, I really do. I don't need him to know the details, but I don't know what Jim's experience was because of these blind spots. So this begins to take a tremendous amount of time away from us in terms of getting forward on the issues that we need to be solving and building and working on. We're chasing ghosts sometimes because of these blind spots. Just a quick story. Why am I so passionate about this? Sorry, I forgot to introduce my company, SiteLane. So I own an app exchange product called SiteLane that is a monitoring and visibility company. And we're really passionate about this subject. So I was on a project in my consulting days, and there was some kind of hidden process, right? In our case, it was integration, right? And it went sideways, right? And nobody noticed for almost a week, right? Somebody came in with a report almost a week later saying, oh my goodness, the numbers are off, something's wrong, right? And so it turned out to be this issue, right? But while we were solving it, right, we had missed millions of important data messages. We spent 40 grand on an emergency project to fix it and bring in consultants and try to figure out what was going on. The data damage took a month to repair, right? Dozens of customers were impacted. And my favorite one, the second one, we spent $20,000 in just direct cost on status meetings. I remember it was 19 days in a row, 10 people in a room asking various versions of the question, what happened? And we were guessing and we were running reports and we were theorizing, right? And in the end, it was a 20-minute problem. When we finally figured out what it was, it took us about 20 minutes to fix it, right? The month of data recovery, if we had seen it and fixed it in 20 minutes, would have taken 2 days instead of a month. The project, we wouldn't have had to do at all, right? And I wouldn't have had 19 days in a row of the same conversation taking up my time and the time of lots of people on the team. So this is a little bit of an extreme example, but this sort of idea where we have something simple and only because of these blind spots, it takes us all kinds of research and guesswork to try to figure out what's happening. When we figure it out, it's not that hard to fix, but figuring it out can be incredibly costly. Okay. Again, questions jump in anytime, but that's sort of the villain we're fighting here. Is all these amazing automations that do great work for us, but that are hidden from us. So what should we do about it? When we're looking to eliminate blind spots, that's the goal, right? Eliminate blind spots so that we can save time. 3 things that we really want to try to do, no matter what our solution is. Number 1, elevate the visibility of key automations. So maybe that automation is a flow, maybe it's code, maybe it's a batch job that runs, maybe it's an integration, maybe it's a Salesforce Shield like event monitoring notification. These things that run, we just got to get them out from under the surface so that we can see what's really happening, right? The second is we need to be able to notice things that are happening and escalate them in real time. Running a report, at the end of the day to say, hey, how did everything go today is okay, right? But certain problems require more immediate response. So not only do we want to elevate the visibility, we want to be able to get access and awareness of them in real time. And then third, it's great that we have an error, but to what extent can we provide actionable content for the people in our team to respond, right? So can we see more about what's going on? Can we be aware of it in real time? And can the content we produce related to it help us solve problems faster? Okay, those are our goals. That's what we're trying to accomplish. Okay. And so we're going to go in and talk a little bit about how to do it. Let's get out of slides here pretty soon. before we jump in, anybody questions, comments, things they want to share about blind spots that they've experienced? Nope, you're just excited for the demo. Let's get into it.
I was gonna say I'm monitoring the chat and I don't have anything now, but I mean, working with a lot of insurance clients, this definitely resonates with some of the issues that I see my DevOps teams and folks trying to figure out for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's certainly, and it's so frustrating, right? When you know the answer is right there, but you just can't get to it, right? And so that's what we're trying to help with. Okay, so let's go in. So really simple. But this is there are many things you can do. It gets very sophisticated. Obviously, at SiteLane, we've gone way beyond into sort of some of the much more sophisticated scenarios and use cases people can encounter. Today, I want to work with really, really simple. Okay, and so it takes 5 things. We're going to build a real-time monitor. In this case, for a flow, it takes 5 things: 1 custom object, 1 platform event, which may or may not be new to you, and we'll walk through that. 1 custom notification, which is like the little red bell, you know, the red notification you get in Salesforce in the upper right-hand corner. And then two pretty simple Salesforce flows. And with those 5 things, we can build dynamic monitors that work for code or flows, right, that don't take any code to build and can really start helping you eliminate some of these blind spots. Okay. And we're going to have some criteria for success and failure. Sure, we can build a thing, but how do we know the monitor is good, right? Number 1, it's got to work for success and failure. And we'll talk about why normal monitors, normal logging that people do often fails. And we'll talk about why. So it's got to work whether the process succeeds or fails. It has to clean up after itself, because whenever you're creating content, monitoring content, you're creating a lot of data, especially if you're monitoring a really sophisticated, a really commonly used process, or if you have a very large team, you're going to just start generating tons of data, and you have to be able to manage that, or you're going to run into storage limit and other issues in Salesforce. Okay. And then the third thing, as we talked about as one of our elevation goals, it's got to be able to notify people in real time, right? So it's got to work all the time. It's got to know how to clean up after itself, and it's got to be able to notify the right people in real time. Okay. Okay. Let's go. Let's flip out of slides here and go to the Salesforce, as they say. All right. Let me start. No, don't start there. Start somewhere else. That's not what I wanted to do. Pardon my demo. Pardon my demo hiccup here. Let's just go to sales. Okay. That's the neutral corner we'll start from. Okay. So let's say that I'm going to create a new account, right? For a new insured, maybe that's coming in, right? And so I'm going to come in and say, well, let me create a new account. And this account is called My Software Business, right? And I'm going to give it a hot rating because I've been talking to people at this account. And in my org, whenever I give a new account a hot rating, an opportunity is automatically created. And tasks go out, and we have all these sort of automations happening, right? And we're going to say that this business is in Michigan, okay? Ew, gross. I don't like that, right? So I'm an end user, and I see this, and I immediately take a break or go get coffee, because that scares me for sure. It's just not a very nice way to see what's happening in my system. Maybe I get a case with a screenshot, right, or something, but it's certainly not what I'd like. So let's go look at the flow that's happening behind this account creation. And here it is, okay? So this is a record triggered flow on an account, okay? And it's got some other, sort of attributes and things. And one of the things it does is, okay, we've created a new account, find out who the account director is, right? Then create a welcome task for them. That is a task where they would go out and say, hey, we need to develop an account plan for this new account, right? You have a new account in your region. So it's creating a task for that director. Then it's going to go find their local agent. right? Who's really going to reach out to them and be working with them, right? And then it's going to create an opportunity based on all of that, okay? But in this case, things didn't work out so well because there was no agent. I'll just give you the secret. There was no agent in the state that we picked in Michigan. And so it threw up, it blew up, okay? Well, so one of the things we can do is use the custom error message, and this isn't really a big part of this talk today, to help us create something a little nicer for the user. So let me go back and try that again, only this time the account is in California, right? And in California, we have an agent, but we don't have an account director because our data is what it is, right? And so this time it still causes a problem, right? But now we can say, hey, we weren't able to create this account, right? Because we couldn't do this. Please assign this account to a different state. That state doesn't have an account director. So already we're surfacing some things in a much more consumable way for the user, right? Giving them some direction. We didn't tell them everything about the actual error that happened because what are they going to do with the owner ID cannot be blank error, right? But we can tell them what happened as a result of their process and what they can do about it, okay? So that's an extremely, extremely simple way to help to start to bring some of that forward, okay? So we need to communicate that there was this problem, this fault, and you see where it says create error log. We're going to talk about that, right? And so what I want to talk about now is setting up a couple of things. Remember, we talked about those 5 things: object, notification, platform event, and 2 flows, right? We're going to go in and talk about each one of those and how they work together, okay? And then we'll come back here and see how they function. So number 1, let's talk about the custom object, okay? So we created a custom object called my error log, right? And this is not unique. It is just a custom object that holds data, right? And so I pre-created an example. I think I did. Whoops, no, I didn't. My bad. Signal error number 2. We'll get back to that, but it's just a log that has an error, and there's a summary, and there's detail, and there's what time the log happened, and who it happened to, and a bunch of other things, right? But again, this is not special. It's just a place to hold error information that might have happened so that it can be looked at by others, okay? So nothing really complex about that. The second item is what we call a platform event. So if you were all on camera, I would ask for a show of hands of who has used platform events before. Some people have, some haven't. Now, I'm not sure why, but in Salesforce, platform events sort of use the old style of UI. So it's not a great comparison to the custom object. But what you notice is that the fields here, the detail, the error summary, the log time, right, and so forth, they're very similar between these 2 objects, right? So what is a platform event? A platform event looks a lot like a custom object. It holds data, right? It's got custom fields. It's got all these things. The big difference between a platform event and an object is that platform events are temporary. A platform event is created, filled with data, and then sent off, or we would say published, right? Or broadcast out. And then other people, and we'll see, flows and triggers and other things are listening for that event, and then they respond in whatever way they want to. So where a custom object creates a record that stays for as long as it stays for, a platform event is temporary. You populate it, fill it with information, and then send it off into the world, and then it's done, okay? So from the prospect of building a platform event, it's just like it. Their behavior and life cycle is different though, okay? So you can see again, very similar error detail, error summary, all these things that I've created in the platform event, okay? And you can also see a subscription. This is a flow, which is one of the 2 flows that I'll show you, that is listening for this platform event to be broadcast. So whenever the platform event happens, and I'll show that, right? It's going to send a message saying, hey, this just happened. And that flow is listening for an event just like that to happen and can respond to it. The most notable thing, the most important thing to notice about a platform event is this field called publish behavior. Custom objects don't have this. This is only for platform events, okay? There's two choices. One is publish immediately, and one is publish after commit, okay? Publish after commit means when the transaction is completely finished and everything's saved safely, then send off an event, then publish this platform event. Publish immediately means don't wait for anything. Immediately, as soon as I create it, send it off, and don't worry about anything else. Okay? So we'll come back to why that's important, but that's the attribute you really want to pay attention to for platform events. Okay? All right, let's go back to our flow, right? And see why this is a problem, because you'll notice that in this flow, I created an error log, right? We had a problem with the welcome task, and we know that because this is the message that we saw. We saw those clean user messages. But right in here, I have a create records element that's populating all this create error log information. But when I go to my error logs, there aren't any. Why is that, right? The reason is that whenever you have, in this case, when you use a custom error message to communicate with the user, everything else that happened in this case, the flow, gets rolled back. So the welcome task is rolled back. If you created opportunities, if you created new accounts, right? This is a record trigger flow for creating a new account. All of it gets rolled back, including the error message that you tried to capture. So when companies create logging frameworks to capture their errors, they wonder sometimes why their logs don't show up. And the answer is, if there is any other automation, let's say that when you create an account, we're going to do this fun flow to create a welcome task and create an opportunity, but then a batch job runs, then an integration runs, then other flows run, then triggers run, all those things. If there's any exception in any of those processes, all of it, including your log message, will go away, which means you'll be back to square one with the blind spot, not knowing that a problem occurred at all. Okay? And so what we're going to do is, instead of using the create error log here, which you notice I'm using the my error log object, see the $_C there, right? I'm going to take this out and replace it with my error event. So the platform event is not the same as the custom object. The platform event looks the same because I'm still populating all these fields in exactly the same way. But the difference is that I'm not using the $_C, which is what custom objects end with. I'm using the $_E. This is how I know that it's a platform event. Okay? So simply by using a platform event with that publish immediately, remember the field publish immediately we were talking about? I know that now, no matter what happens, no matter what gets rolled back, I know that my event is going to get published. It's going to survive the error. This is one of the only ways in Salesforce to persist information, to publish information, even when an exception happens. Normally, when an exception happens, everything gets undone. With platform events, that cannot be the case. Okay. So I'm going to save as here and activate. And then we're going to run it one more time. And we still get the error event, right? The error still happens in this case. But now, when I go to my error logs, I'll see that a new error log was generated, right? And this is very simple. I'm just kind of reporting the error. What we're going to talk about in a little bit is building stories, building more than just sharing the error, right? So again, I put in this event, it's still rolled back. If you're telling me, Eric, that platform events are temporary, then how did the log record get created, right? Well, for that, we have to move on to, so we talked about the custom object. We've talked about the platform event. Let's move on to remember there are 5 things we're looking at. The third one is simple. It's just kind of fun. I don't know if you use custom notification types, right? But I've created one here, and that's what creates the little red spot around the bell, which hasn't happened yet. What's great about creating custom notifications is it's really, really, really easy. You simply call it something, and you say if you want those notifications to only be on desktop or only be or on mobile or both. Okay. So I've created one for myself called my error notification. Simple, right? Okay. So we've said that when I run my flow, it broadcasts this event, but who's listening for it? And for that, we go to the first of the 2 flows. Okay. So this, and I know this is a lot going on the screen, so I'll just give you a second to breathe that in. This is a flow, and notice that it's a platform event triggered flow. So this isn't one people use as much, but it's standard out of with Salesforce. It's a flow type. You can create a flow whose only job is to listen for a specific platform event. And it's listening for my custom error handler event, the same one that I published. So anytime that I publish one of these events from anywhere in Salesforce, this flow will automatically be listening for it, capture it, and respond as it needs to, okay? And so very simply here, and when we're talking about error handling, it's going to look at one of the things, sorry, let me go back to my flow. One of the things that I put in when I published this event was the notification type. What do you want me to do with this error, right? And so in this case, I've said, well, I want you to create a record. I could have said, I want you to create a case. I want you to create an in-app notification, right? And all of this is at your discretion how to design this. Okay. So in my handle errors flow, the first question I ask is, well, what type of error is it? Or what type of response do you want, right? I might send an email, it might be an in-app application, or it might be log a record, right? And so, of course, this logic can get much more complex and fun, and it does in sidelined. But all we're going to do then is create this log record, right? And the difference between this log record that we created right in the flow and this one is that this one is on the other side of the publishing boundary, meaning no matter what errors might have happened in that process, this flow will complete and succeed every time. Okay, so important to create that bridge across error boundaries by creating this listening flow. Okay? And that's why when we had the same process and the same error occurred, we were still able to capture what happened, right? And we could begin to get even more fancy and say, not only do I want a log record created, but then I want somebody to know about it, right? So after you create the log record, notify someone, right? Let's go this way. We'll go back again. Sometimes this takes a minute to show up. There it is, the little red dot. It gives me such a feeling of satisfaction to see that. And you can tell I've been practicing, right? But so not only can we record the log no matter what had happened, we can also notify people in real time and take them right to the place where the information is that they want to know so they can get right on action. So I want you to imagine with me for a second that this is not as simple of an example, and that this error detail is long and drawn out, and there's all kinds of information in it, right? This is, of course, a very simple example. How would you compare the ability to solve a user's problem if they said, hey, Salesforce is broken, what's going on? Versus saying, hey, I want to let you know that so-and-so, such and such a user, right, tried this, it didn't work. Here's all the information that happened under the covers or behind the scenes, right? And you can begin to, and what we do at sidelined is begin to capture all the details of what was going on in the process. And it gives you tremendous, not only information on what the error was, but what background there was, right? What was happening? What was the user's behavior, right, going on? Now, you could build all that yourself, right? You can imagine how to sort of extend this, right, and start to capture all that information in your logs, right? You can totally do that all on your own. But using this platform event is the way that you ensure that the information you need to serve the users and serve the cases that are coming in is going to survive no matter what happens. Okay, so I don't want to oversell it. They're simple concepts, but they're new, so I want to chain them together. Okay, and so this handle error method, and what's amazing, what I love the most about this model is the two pieces don't have to know about each other. That is, the person who built the platform event and incorporated it into processes doesn't have to be the person or even aware of the person who's designing our error handling response, right? So it might be that as we're building business flows, all we're doing is adding these events to them. That's all we have to care about. And on the back end, we can then create really sophisticated response handling frameworks for when different types of events happen in the system. Okay. And then just to complete it, I said one thing we haven't talked about yet is how the monitor cleans up after itself, because it's creating a tremendous amount of data, right? Well, this is the easiest part. What we did was each of the monitors that we have, we baked into our monitoring object an automatic purge date, right, for 30 days from now. 30 days from now, get rid of this. Now, get rid of this might mean send it to your enterprise data stream. It might be incorporated with Data Cloud. It might be all kinds of fun things. You don't have to just delete them. But again, for simplicity's sake, eventually they have to get purged out of Salesforce for storage reasons, right? So because I have this purge date on all of my error logs, right, I'm able to create a really, really simple flow. Obviously, you could do this in code as well. And all it does is, on a daily schedule, it says, purge any log whose, well, this is a checkbox. This is a formula field that says if today is after the purge date, right? And so I just create a really simple flow that says every day, go look at the logs that are created, and any that are past their expiration date, right? Get rid of them, purge them. Now, this flow also could be made much more sophisticated and do all kinds of fun things. Send this data to Amazon for permanent storage, right? Send it to a big object, right? We start to get the ability to really design and direct what happens to errors, how long they live, where they go after. There's all kinds of issues related to that. But with just this object, this platform event to bridge the error gaps, this custom notification, and these two flows, we're able to create a fairly sophisticated ability to capture what's happening in the org, whether it's happening in flows. This also works from code. It doesn't take any code. And so anyone can work on this and start to extend it. Okay. And in the end, the goal is that you'd have much better responsiveness, much stronger ability to notice when things happen, respond to them, but respond with the information you need to make intelligent decisions, to make faster decisions. All right. So I'm conscious of the time. I'm going to go back to the slides and do some summary things. Before I do that, any questions that pop up? Anything else that someone might want to see? I can go back if that can help.
I got your chat open and nothing now. This is really cool.
Okay.
Like really cool. And I could even see
great.
get some pieces of this and being able to use it. So, oh, I do have one.
Yeah.
How is it different than Nebula Logger?
Yeah, so Nebula Logger is a popular open source logging framework, that does similar things to this. Nebula Logger is very sort of logging focused. It's not so much on the response pieces. So I mean, sorry to mention the company, at Sidelined, we have a whole other area besides capturing things. There's more to handling errors than just writing them down. Where Nebula Logger, it tends to be pretty capture log, which is great, which is very helpful. And it's free, which is also helpful. Nebula Logger also has a little higher lift to use. It's helpful when people have a lot of Apex teams or people that are doing straight logging. If you live in flows and simpler environments, Nebula Logger isn't always the greatest match. It certainly can be used. It's a great product in the ecosystem. But it tends to be used more by teams deep in code, logging things in code. So it's covering similar environments, but this is the do-it-yourself version. Our product is a little more user and business oriented, but Nebula Logger is also a great tool. Good question.
Awesome.
Anything else? Okay, I'm going to switch back to just do a little bit of summary, and then we will be able to close up. So Alt Shift F5. Is that it? Okay. So we went through these 5 things, right? And what we sort of learned about, one of the sort of main things that we learned about today was this idea of the platform event. I call it a bridge, right? Because it allows us to skip over the problems we have from errors that might occur. And remember, the error that rolls everything back, the error that causes your data to go away, isn't always going to be in the flow that you're building, right? It's not always going to be in the Apex class that you're building. It could be something that happens downstream, something that gets called subsequently, right? And you wouldn't know that. You're not in charge of that, right? For you, data will just start not showing up. So using this platform of event bridge helps us to kind of guarantee the things that need to get written down and known. Okay. So again, summary, a couple things just to leave us with. Number one, when you're thinking about this, create what I call a smart logging model. Some people, and to a certain extent in this demo, right, we sort of saw a logging object that wrote down an error message, and that can be very helpful, right? But when you're thinking about what does logging, what do I want to see or monitoring need to include, I think about the 5 W's, right? Who did it? When did it happen to them? Where were they in the implementation when it happened? The more you can incorporate that, again, the more you and your people are going to be able to interpret what's happening and respond quickly and more effectively. Okay. Clean up, tell stories of success, not just failure. I'll get back to that in a second. And then clean up after yourself. Very important. Again, we're creating a lot of data. So we have to make sure we have a plan for what's going to happen to that data. Otherwise, the org just blows up and you'll get a surprise bill for overusing your data storage, right? And then finally, focus on situations, not just technical items. That is, it's when we're onboarding a new insured. That's the process we're monitoring, not just this flow, not just this create record. Try to think in terms of business processes and what you want to see and what you want to be monitoring, right? Step 2, incorporate platform events. So I won't go over all of this again, but if you can build a custom object, you can build a platform event. It really is almost as easy. Paying attention to that published behavior that we talked about, that's a key item. And by the way, it's not always publish immediately. There are some events that only make sense if the transaction completes. So I don't want to set up a good and bad, right? But in terms of error management, publish immediately is certainly a very important setting, right? And then consuming it using flows. I could have consumed that same event using triggers or using code, and many people do that, right? We saw an example with flows today, okay? And then finally, really invest in the real-time response, right? There's more than just an in-app notification or creating a record. Email templates, Slack, notifications to third-party systems, right? Who needs to know what's going on, right? Communications give us the ability to notice, right? At Sidelined, we talk a lot about how do we let users self-solve? What if we could make what's happening underneath so visible and so clear to people that we never got a case for it. Nobody registered a case because that own user could solve their own problem. That's kind of the dream scenario, right? But it applies in some parts of error management world. Okay. And then again, I just want to say one more time, right? Monitoring is about more than just errors. It's very easy to talk about bug fixes and error management and creating JIRA tickets and like handling bugs, right? When we spoke at the Dreamin' conferences a couple of years ago, and we continue to, we do a survey that says, hey, where would you like, we just ask a simple question, where would you like more visibility in your system? And I really thought that people were going to say error handling. I want to know what errors are going on so I can fix them faster, but they didn't. 53%, more than half of the people in that survey said, I want to be able to track and audit what Salesforce is doing, right? So it's not just when it fails. Some of our automations, some of our integrations, especially like some listed here, are so sophisticated that when the user presses a button, Salesforce jumps into action, does a bunch of magic, and nobody knows. Just by way of example, we have a customer who has a very, very, very complex billing engine. They've got lots of contracts, national and discounts and entitlements and all these things. It's not in insurance, it's in field service. And so they wrote a billing engine in Apex because it was that complex. They just needed the sophistication of the code to get all that done. And so when people would come to them and say, hey, this is my bill from 2 months ago, how did you get to this number? They don't know, right? They just pressed the button or the monthly billing job ran. And so how do we know? How are we able to track what the system is doing? What if Salesforce doesn't break? What if it just misbehaves? What if it miscalculates? Those are areas where we need visibility as well, right? And so in all, whether it's renewing policies or processing claims, which involves processes and automations and integrations and all kinds of fun things, right? Can we begin to create monitoring, not just to handle problems, but to tell the stories of our business, to describe how users are behaving and what results they're getting from that? So I encourage us to be thinking about where do we need visibility, not just to handle problems, but be able to truly monitor and review and understand retroactively what's going on, what choices users and teams are making, and how that's working out for them. Sometimes it's bad data. Sometimes it's a user choice. Sometimes it's a true bug, right? All of these things are meaningful to get visibility in. And so as you're thinking about this solution, at SiteLane, right, one of our things is visibility should be part of every design conversation. Whenever an automation is created, whether it's flow or code, we should always be asking, who might need to see what happens here? And in what use cases would they need to see it? What content will they need? How will they answer the questions that get asked? That's part of the design conversation too, and it's how we design great visibility strategies in Salesforce. And so finally, again, we did it, we went through these 5 things. And our goal was not just to create new stuff in Salesforce, it's to create clarity for the people who have to respond to events in the org. So if we look at these questions that we asked before, right? When did this automation run? Is this system down, right? Why do the Salesforce reports not work? What if instead of, in response to those questions, picking up the phone or scheduling a meeting or trying to figure out, what if we could just answer them, right? What if we had been watching those processes and just knew the answer? How much time would that save in our day, right? What did you last lose an afternoon to? What if you only had to lose 5 minutes to it, right? The secret to that difference is understanding your blind spots and using some techniques to bring what's going on underneath the covers in Salesforce to the front. And if you can do that effectively, you're going to be a lot happier, you're going to move a lot faster, and your users are going to be able to stay on mission and avoid disruptions that normally could have taken them offline for longer than anybody would want. So I think that's it. I think going away, one of the things I'd ask, people say, oh, this is a big topic, Eric. What am I going to do with all this information? A good place to start is to ask yourself, what are just 5 things in my org? Maybe it's 5 processes. Maybe it's 5 flows. Maybe it's a class of code that's really complex. just pick 5, maybe it's an integration. Just pick 5 things and ask yourself, what 5 things in my org do I want more visibility into? And start there. And then you'll discover and learn how and where visibility can help you with blind spots and with running your org in general. And so with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to Danielle and Monica and the community for setting this up. Certainly, if you want to talk more about these things, I'm happy to reach out to me on LinkedIn, write me at my email address below. I am happy to chat even about this demo or as you have further questions. With that, I think I will turn it back over to Danielle and say thank you again.
Yeah, awesome. I actually have a couple of questions. Yay.
Excellent.
So one of them that we got was just around, does this have a step-by-step guide on how to create these 2 flows? This video will be posted onto the community channel and those kinds of things. I don't know, Eric, if you have any documentation on it or not, but they can absolutely go back and rewatch you building that and how that actually worked as well.
And I mean, I really mean it. I mean, email me and I'll get on the phone with you and we'll go through it together. I mean, I am part of the community just like all of you. And so I'm happy to jump in and talk and walk through these. If you think it could be helpful to you, I'm happy to walk. In addition to the video, as Danielle said, happy to connect with anyone.
Awesome. The next one we have is, hi, Eric, is your tool FedRAMP authorized?
Not yet. It is in process. We just are implementing in the state of Indiana, and we're talking to a couple of others. And so SLED in general, state, local, and education, if you're not in that space, is a big focus for us. But FedRAMP certification takes like 15 months and $300,000. Like it's a big deal. So we're on that path, but we're not there yet.
I also heard a great solution. If the org had Shield event monitoring, how would that modify and or add to the approach outlined today?
Yeah, great question. So with sidelined, we just incorporate that. So it would be no difference whether you had Shield or not. In this case, you'd have to start looking into, I would encourage you to look into something called transaction security policies. This is the set of events with Shield, with event monitoring, that you can capture in real time. Others, you have to go to event log files. It gets very complicated, and we're coming out with some products specifically in that space. But I think there's about a dozen, like permission set events, login events. There's about a dozen that you can real time capture with transaction security policies. That's just out of the box. And your flows could listen for that as well and incorporate that into your logging as well. So that's a bit more complicated, but it certainly could be incorporated into your strategy. Great question.
Awesome. Well, we are right at time. So I'm again going to post all of this to our the community group page that we have, and I'll probably even be posting it out to LinkedIn and things like that as well. Eric, awesome to see you as always. Hopefully I will be seeing you at Dreamforce along with many of your others that are on here. I'll make sure that all of those events get posted. I think you were at Florida Dreaming last year too. You coming again this year? I forget.
I'm not scheduled for Florida Dreaming this year. I've got a couple of things, but I could be talked into it. Ben was asking me about submitting for it, so we'll see. With awesome. The new man, if you guys haven't been to Florida Dreaming though, the new Clearwater location is like beautiful. It's amazing where they hold it. It's fantastic. It's
where I live, so I will say that it's very nice that I get to live in paradise. Well, thank you again for everyone today for joining today. Monica, thanks for being the hostess with the mostest with me as well. And we will be talking to you all soon. So have a great day, everyone, and see many of you at Dreamforce, hopefully.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.